We actually come to this day with some regret. We have had a year and a half of hearings, of requests from this administration, and we have had the sadness of what happened to the Bryant Terry family that has been enveloping every single proceeding that we have been a part of. I want to get to the bottom of what happened to Bryant Terry. I want to get to the bottom of what happened to other people who have been damaged by the actions of our government. And the key question has always been, what did this administration know, and when did they know it? We have been asking this question for close to a year and a half now on this matter. And I have a request for you, Mr. Chairman, and if you could just answer some questions.
Of course.
The other side continues to talk about yesterday's proceedings, and they continue to say that there was a very reasonable request made of you. My understanding of the request is that you were supposed to completely agree to not hold these proceedings in the future if they were going to give you those documents. Is that correct?
That's correct. I think both the ranking member would agree that contempt had to be off the table in return for documents that were not presented yesterday nor described.
So the reasonable request was that these proceedings were not going to be off the table completely, not delayed, but completely off the table. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I don't find that reasonable, and I don't think the American people will find that reasonable. And that's why we're here today. If the Attorney General of the United States would have come to the meeting yesterday and would have said, you know what, we're going to give you those documents, and then we can discuss the contempt proceedings, I think that would have been a reasonable request. If he would have said, you can hold your contempt proceedings later, but let me try to comply with this subpoena, I think that would have been reasonable. But instead, we have been sitting here, and as I said back in October, the Attorney General of the United States has an obligation to provide truthful and accurate testimony to Congress. When Attorney General Eric Holder testified before Congress on May 3rd, his statements were either untrue or deliberately misleading. It is clear from recently released documents that Mr. Holder did in fact know about Fast and Furious well before he publicly admitted. Attorney General Holder has a troubling pattern of failed cooperation with the legislative branch. Because of this intentional stonewalling and his misleading testimony, I now call for Mr. Holder's resignation. I have said that from the beginning, and this pattern continues even till this morning. The Attorney General has not only failed to produce all the relevant documents, he has misled this committee and misled other committees, preventing us from uncovering the simple truth of what happened. When did they know about it? What did they know, and when did they know it? When the Attorney General was before this committee last year, I brought to light his historical pattern of willful ignorance with a series of slides highlighting his lack of knowledge when he's under oath. He knows nothing, he says nothing, and he seeks for nothing. Never in my life have I been met by a man more unconcerned with the search for the truth. My slides, as you remember, struck a nerve with Mr. Holder, and he protested, but with the look of a man who knew he had been found out. And since then, we've found even more instances of Mr. Holder being ignorant about key facts. For instance, Mr. Holder used his trademark phrase, I am not at this point aware that gun-walking tactics were contained in wiretap applications. Now, after having received the wiretap applications that Mr. Holder has desperately tried to keep from this committee, we do know that those tactics were explicitly outlined. Contrary to Mr. Holder's testimony, once again, the facts are clear. Mr. Holder is either not telling the truth or he's grossly incompetent. I repeat my call for his resignation. I support